Welcome back to the channel. You're here with the Lone Wolf. I got sent this article today from a good friend of mine who has constantly criticised me for my admiration of Eastern European women and how he thinks that my strategy for the future of dating women in Eastern Europe is a flawed one. He seems to think that I should focus on myself and in turn my own attitude to dating in the West and just deal with the situation in the West. He's married to someone from the West, so I suppose he lucked out. But anyway, he sent me this article today that is about a guy who got scammed in Ukraine, and I've just skimmed through it. I think it's going to be very interesting to share with you, purely because of the number of red flags that this guy just ignores. So here we go. It's a fake wedding and a $250,000 scam. There's the couple. When a British charity worker got engaged to a young Ukrainian woman, he thought he was building a new life for them both in Odessa. He was wrong. James's car pulled up at the Villa Otrada. The 52-year-old British charity worker had been looking forward to this moment for months. He was excited to see his fiancée Irina waiting for him outside the restaurant on the Ukraine's Black Sea coast. 20 years younger than him, she looked glamorous, her blonde hair fresh from the hairdresser. I wouldn't call her young. She's not old, but she's not young. To me, young would be like 23, 24. So I don't know what they mean by young woman. Not far away were what James thought were Irina's parents and 60 invited guests, also dressed to the nines. Dressed to the nines? I mean, that's... For those of you that aren't familiar with the BBC, that's kind of slang. They wouldn't... The BBC don't normally use slang in their articles, so maybe they're trying to modernise and get with the times. Not far away were what James thought... Okay, covered that bit. James got out of the car and the waiting crowd turned to clap. It was July 2017, the start of a hot summer in Odessa, and the tables had been laid out on Villa Otrada's terrace overlooking the sea. We have a nice statue there. I have seen pictures of Odessa actually in Ukraine, and it looks very historic. I really am interested in European history as well, so I'm definitely going to visit at some point, I think. Moments later, James and Irina recited their wedding vows under an arch of flowers. He's just met her. Literally just met her. He's only been corresponding with her online, and they're getting married under an arch of flowers. They've just met. Yeah. But what should have been the perfect moment was in fact nothing of the sort. By midnight, James was lying alone in hospital, sick from a suspected spiked drink. He was married, but it wasn't to the woman he loved. It was the couple's wedding partner. Oh, jeez. Ugh. This is a story about how a British man lost most of his life savings as well as his dignity, and how Ukraine's justice system laughed in his face. I don't blame them for laughing in his face. James is not his real name. Yeah, I would anonymise it as well, my friend. Such is his embarrassment that he's told no one in the UK his story, not even his family. The BBC has verified his account of what happened using bank documents, official records, text messages and interviews with many of those directly involved. A sign showing the silhouette of a man in a hat with a pipe sticks out above the pavement of Lanzaronivska Street in central Odessa. Wow, I nailed that. He's appropriated Sherlock Holmes for his business. Follow the yellow and black arrow through the archway and across a courtyard and you reach the office of Robert Pepinian, private investigator. The former policeman is well dressed with dyed black hair. Everything is on brand. There's a Sherlock Holmes notepad, business cards, and his ringtone is the theme tune of the Soviet version of Sherlock Holmes, which many in the former Soviet world argue is the best. And he actually does look like he was in the KGB or something. So I imagine, yeah, they say he was in the police. I bet he was actually in the FSB or something. As it turns out, Mr. Pepinian's methods bear little relation to that of his fictional hero on Baker Street. We don't work with the police, we use psychological methods. He says with a chuckle. This money was taken illegally, so we have to use kind of illegal ways of getting it back. I like his style. I really do like that approach. A block away from Mr. Pepinian's office in Odessa is Deribazovskaya Street. It's the entertainment heart of the city, full of restaurants and bars. Walk down it in the evening and you'll almost certainly see Western men dining out with much younger Ukrainian women, a bag of expensive designer gifts sitting on the chair beside them. Ukraine is one of Europe's poorest countries with an average wage of about $350 a month. There's a thriving dating industry here. It's multifaceted and ranges from paper mail, email services, to face-to-face romance tours where Western men pay thousands of dollars to meet a series of prospective young Ukrainian wives. But James says he didn't come to Odessa looking for love. Oh man. A charity worker living in the UK was asked by a friend in 2015 to help set up a new project supporting children fleeing the conflict zone in Ukraine's east. Europe's second largest country had just undergone a revolution, and Russia had responded by supporting a rebel uprising. Working abroad was new to James, but he threw himself into it with the help of a translator called Julia. For several months he shuttled back and forth, combining his voluntary work in Odessa with his full-time job in the UK. Then that winter, a heavy snowfall brought their work in Odessa to a halt. There wasn't much to do, so Julia suggested that James might like to go on a date with one of her friends. That friend was Irina, then 32 years old. She was from Donetsk, one of the cities in eastern Ukraine. That are now occupied by Russian-backed fighters. It soon became clear that her troubled past went much deeper than just fleeing war. She immediately told me about 2 previous marriages and why she didn't want to marry a Ukrainian man again. There was an age difference of 20 years, but James says they got on like a house on fire. The couple went out for a few evenings in a row, enjoying Odessa's nightlife. He had fun with Irina, but they were never alone. Irina spoke minimal English, and James no Russian or Ukrainian. So as is the case with much of Odessa's dating scene, a translator, in this case Julia, was always there, and getting paid up to $150 a day. Oh, I mean, if you're going to go out there and date, you've got to be able to speak the language, man. Honestly. If I was going to do that, I would train up. I would literally have private lessons every week to become at least proficient in the language. How can you go there and have to rely on a translator that you're paying bank every single day? It's lazy. It's lazy if you want to get to know the country and the culture. You got to depend on a translator. It's honestly, it's poor. It's kind of arrogant as well. I think you should actually make an effort. It was a bit weird having someone repeating whatever was being said, but there was a chemistry between us. Perversely, when they were apart, communication was easier. They flirted through the messaging app Viber, which has a translation function. You gave me a real fairy tale, and thanks so much for that. I believe in you. Just you can give me this happiness. I love you. One message she sent, James says. Over the next 6 months, the new couple saw each other. Whenever James came to Odessa, there were expensive meals and evenings at the opera house. I think the translator is actually more attractive than his eventual wife. He should have just married the translator. If he was going to marry anybody. If he had to marry one of them, go with the translator. But intimacy, even kissing, was off limits. Translator Julia was always there, and Irina told him she didn't believe in S before marriage. I thought that's a very high moral standard. She'd obviously been brought up very well. It gets worse and worse. Engaged. 8 months before the wedding reception, the pair held an engagement party at the same venue, Villa Otrada. A video shows James and Irina dancing slowly on the dance floor. He's moving stiffly, she's smiling and waves at the camera. Glitter is falling from the sky as Whitney Houston's ballad, Could I Have This Kiss Forever, echoes across the function room. It's November 2016, 11 months after their first date. James had popped the question after some firm prodding from both Julia and Irina. They're in on it together, mate. It's a complete scam. He says he'd fallen in love but had no illusions about the strength of Irina's feelings. She felt so trapped in her country. She was obviously intelligent and wanted to create another future outside Ukraine. The connection was a sort of shared interest. James began paying for Irina to have English lessons. She can probably speak English already, mate. The hope was that it would pave the way for her to move with him to the UK, but after a few chats with embassy officials, it was clear that the bureaucratic obstacles to a move were huge. It was going to take several years, he said. So he took the plunge, deciding to move to Ukraine and start a new life with Irina. He quit his job and sold his house, and with Irina's encouragement, they began looking for a place to live in Odessa. Buying was expected because it gave a sort of permanence to the relationship. My friends in the UK thought it was a big step, but they were happy for me that I had a future. In fact, his problems were just starting. They can't be... Oh, if they're your friends, man, the friends should have been like basically tying you to the nearest lamppost to stop you from leaving. You can't see that there's more red flags than a Soviet Communist Party parade. The apartment. Transferring money from the UK to the Ukraine is never straightforward because Ukraine is one of Europe's most corrupt countries and has had several high-profile banking scandals. Money laundering controls mean there are limits on the size of the transfer and big numbers attract attention. So it wasn't a complete surprise to James when Irina suggested an unusual arrangement to get his $200,000 of apartment money to Ukraine. Instead of putting the money in Irina's personal account, James was told he should put the money in the company account of her friend Christina, the wedding planner. Red flags. Multiple red flags. I would have bailed out way before this point. Way before. She's not even that attractive, let's be honest. If you're going to be looking at Ukrainian women, which are renowned as some of the most beautiful in the world, there's way better than this. If you're going to go through with this scam on the likelihood of actually having some bedroom fun, there's much better available, probably just down the street. It's poor. Poor. Despite some misgivings, James wired the money to Christina. When the money arrived in Ukraine, things took a surreal turn. Irina announced to James that the bank would only release the money if he was legally married to Christina. What? It would be a formality completed in just 10 minutes in a registry office and unpicked at a later date. James was now in an impossible situation. With just days to go, Irina was threatening to call off their wedding unless the money was released and they had a home to move into. He's not in an impossible situation. Just bail out. Just go home. What the hell? Impossible situation. Just say, no, I ain't doing it. I'm in complete disarray, Irina told him in a Viber message. You want me to look like a night worker in the eyes of my relatives? That's because you are. You are. This is some text messages that they had. All the relatives are already preparing for the wedding, prepared a surprise for us, and you just want me to hit me face in the dirt. Not only do I want to look in the eyes of relatives, as a night worker going abroad to live is not married. I'm in complete disarray. You're on the engagement was about the wedding, and now show me all this. Very painful to hear it from you. I all can understand only because I love you, but I don't know how to be ready to work round the clock and give the debt together with you. I was being threatened with the thought of 60 guests at the wedding, including her family. They'd all be coming round beating the crap out of me if I didn't go ahead with the marriage because I was letting Irina down. Oh, let them beat you up, man. It's not worth losing that amount of money. Let them beat you up. Or get the nearest flight out of there, or try and find the nearest border to anywhere else. 60 guests at the wedding, the entire country could be chasing me down. I'm not getting married. I was told that divorcing Christina and then remarrying Irina would be an easy thing to do. So on Friday, the 10th of July 2017, with the encouragement of his fiancée Irina, James married the wedding planner Christina Stakova. Irina was jumping up and down. She was happy now. With good reason. The money was released, and that very afternoon Christina and Irina announced that all of the 200 grand had been spent on an apartment. He would later discover the new place had actually cost just 60 grand and was not his alone, but jointly owned with his legal spouse, the wedding planner. I was such an idiot. The reception. The day after marrying Christina, James's taxi pulled up at his wedding reception to Irina at the villa. His plan was to do everything, apart from the legalities, go ahead with the wedding before sorting out a quickie divorce and a new legal marriage to Irina. As always, James paid for everything. Ukraine is a cheap country by European standards, but you wouldn't have guessed it from Christina's 20 grand itemised wedding bill. What the hell is this? 1,200 for cake, 2 grand for renting the restaurant. Table food, 6 grand. Wedding arch, honeymoon. Musician, 1,200. What? $1,200 for a musician. Oh man, yeah, that's With the benefit of hindsight, James now knows that everything about the wedding reception was a scam. The prices were inflated, you don't say. The 60 guests most probably paid to be there. Even Irina's mother turned out to be Julia, the translator's mum. He was almost certainly the only one attending who thought it was real. It sounds like everybody's in on it except him. Well, that obviously is the case, right? James didn't know it at that point, but his fiancée Irina already had a husband. Official records seen by the BBC show that she's been married to Andrei Saikov since August 2015, 3 months before she met James. Christina, the wedding planner, also had a husband called Dennis, but he was apparently more willing to play along. Records show Christina divorced Dennis 3 weeks before she signed the paper to marry James. Once the scam marriage was over, she married Dennis again. The evening of the wedding reception, with the first ever night of intimacy between James and Irina looming, drastic measures were taken. James believes he was drugged by the person who he thought was Irina's mother. She was plying me with drinks, and I'm now sure it was spiked. I started violently shaking and had to be taken out. James ended the night in hospital. Irina refused to go with him. So, even if you took all of this as true, if something happened to you on your wedding night and you ended up having to go to hospital, wouldn't you expect your wife to join you? You know? If they actually gave a damn about you. Pathetic. Irina refused to go with him, and the next day accused him of getting drunk and humiliating her in front of her family. For the next few weeks, Irina kept a distance, saying she herself had medical problems, but that James couldn't visit her in hospital. I'm in hospital and you cannot come because you are not my husband. In passport, your wife is Christina, so with me can be only my mom. James still transferred her more than $12,000 for medical costs. What the hell is wrong with this guy? Oh my God. There's no helping some of these men. There really isn't. They deserve everything they get. Eventually the madness stopped. A friendly Ukrainian intervened and broke it to James that the real value of his apartment was just $63,000, less than he'd paid. $140,000 less than he paid. Well, just look at it, man. Look at it. He paid $200,000 for that. Honestly. James finally realised that the woman had scammed him out of about 250 grand, 2/3 of his life savings. Oh, dear me. 52-year-old guy scammed out of 250. He ignored all of these red flags, man, and I'm afraid to say he deserves it, because you can't be this stupid. No one can be this stupid. My heart fell into my boots. It goes beyond the level of human understanding that all these people would behave like that and think nothing of it. Well, if there's people that are this stupid, you deserve to get taken advantage of, man. They're gonna do it. They're that poor. Tatiana is an official translator who tried to help James pick up the pieces after the scam. Every year we hear stories of people being ripped off in Odessa, but this scale of disaster is different. Somehow James avoided sinking into deep depression. Instead, he focused his energy on getting his money back and getting justice. It would be very difficult for me not to sink into some sort of depression, not because of what had happened to me, but because I was that stupid. I had all the bank documents for the transfers and the Viber messages between us. I was sure it could be sorted out. But he was about to get a crash course in the inadequacies of the Ukrainian justice system. 4 times he went to the Odessa police giving his account of what had happened and the evidence he collected. At times they laughed in my face. Yeah, I would as well if you came in with this story. Ukraine's police force, and Odessa's in particular, have a pretty rotten reputation for fighting crime. Marriage scams, even unusual ones like this, are a long way down their list of priorities. There are cases here when the police don't do anything and don't move, James's lawyer says. We have to keep asking them to take action. Getting the police to act often involves bribing them, but it was something which James refused to do. Irina and Christina were taken in for questioning, but despite James's documents and his lawyer's prompting, no charges have been brought against them. We contacted the police in Odessa, but they declined to comment on James's case. The only progress has been that after James's marriage to Christina was ruled bogus, he was named the sole owner of the 63 grand apartment. He's holding on to it in the rather forlorn hope that its value will rise once the COVID pandemic is over, but there's no way it will get close to the 200 grand he paid for it. Playing the game. With the police uninterested, James has thrown in his lot with Robert Papinian, the unorthodox Sherlock Holmes. He's the only saving grace that you've got, mate, in this whole thing. He looks like he was former KGB assassin. We've tried the police and everything through the correct channels. You have to play the game, unfortunately. The game means paying the investigator 3 grand up front and 30% of any money recovered. There's no secret about Mr. Papinian's methods. He freely admits to us that intimidation is one of his tools, Yeah, and whoever's the parties responsible deserve what they get. But you can't be this stupid. When we visit his office, 3 heavy-set men are sitting in the entrance. I'll bet they're all nails. Bet they're all solid. Mr. Papinian believes that the women were the driving force behind the scam, but has been communicating with them through their husbands. Mr. Papinian shares their contacts and we reach out. Christina's 2-time husband, Dennis, sends us photos of a car that he says has been following him and complains that Mr. Papinian's men are extortionists. Brilliant. Brilliant. Turn the tables on these crooks. Irina's husband Andre replies that there must be a mix-up and that he would pass our contacts to his wife. She never gets back to us, but we find her dating profile still online. She's listed as a divorced babysitter and promises, "My heart will belong to one man and only one." From the UK, James now swaps translated Viber messages with Mr. Papinian rather than Irina. He's still hoping that he might be getting some more of his money back. "My guys were in the city of Chernomorsk near Odessa 2 weeks ago," said the latest message. "We found Irina near the house. We gave her until June 20 to resolve the issue of debt repayment. James has endured too much to get his hopes up. He's got another charity job now and is trying to move on. Part of the reason he's concealing his identity is that he doesn't want his employers to be alarmed. Being scammed out of $250,000 doesn't look good on the CV. Yeah, and it makes you look like a damn fool. I haven't told my family what happened either. It would just upset them. And what would you say to someone who reads your story and says, 'What a fool'? They'd be right." James says he decided to tell the BBC his story to warn others tempted to seek romance in Ukraine. One crumb of comfort he takes away from it is that Britain's Foreign Office has modified its Ukraine travel advice to reflect his painful and costly experience. There have been incidents of marriage fraud and attempted extortion affecting foreign nationals. Unfortunately, it's very unlikely you'll be able to recover your money if you're a victim of such a scam. You know what could have actually happened in this whole case and avoided all of this heartache? As soon as they started levying marriage demands onto James, he could have just said, "No, I'm leaving. I'll just go and find a woman who's 10 years younger than you and date her for a bit down the street." And that's it. I don't understand. As soon as he went along, because he's weak, with all of these demands and just got further and further into Wonderland, that was his problem. You expect all of this garbage when you're going to places like this. And you have to insulate, you have to take measures against it. There were so many hurdles that he had to run through. So many red flags that he ignored. That's why he got scammed. And now he's basically warning everyone. It's like, the levels of stupidity. So yeah, I think those of us who are planning on potentially exploring the dating scene over in that direction, in Eastern Europe, Russia, Ukraine, maybe Belarus, whatever, you've got to take heed from this story, but you basically just have to be aware that you can't be as stupid as this dude. So hopefully I'm very glad that my friend sent me the article, and hopefully you found some value in my critical analysis of it and a lot of humour as well. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll see you next time.